Doing so, welcome to this React hook form crash course. It's a form library for React. It focuses more on the performance using uncontrolled inputs. A controlled input's value is controlled by the use state, and on the other hand, the uncontrolled inputs is never controlled. You get the value using reps similar to this. Uncontrolled inputs are performant because reps doesn't re-render when the value is changed, but React states do. That's why uncontrolled inputs are better in terms of performance. You can also test this by typing something here. You can see no re-render happens for the children's, but the re-render happens here for the controlled form. It also works with subscriptions, so your entire form won't get re-rendered if a children wants the value of the form. So in this case, you can see these two elements are watching to this form input if I change something here, but these two doesn't. But if I click on this checkbox and type something, now it starts to re-render this element too. This is why React hook forms are very performant. It also comes with lots of other features like validation, integration with third-party libraries like validation libraries, UI frameworks, and so on. It also even comes with a dev tool, which we are going to use. So if you're interested, consider like this video, subscribe to my channel, and without further ado, let's get started. I've already written a blog post about it. You can use this for future reference. The link will be on the description. To follow along, you can clone this repo and install the packages and run npm start to run the server. But to use this form, you just need to install this package called React hook form. If you want to use the dev tool, you can install this package also. So let's go over to the starter code. So we have this myform component. And in the myform component, we have some commented code, and we have a simple form with bunch of input elements. And these components are actually coming from Chakra UI, as you can see on my right window. You don't need to use it, but you can learn about it from my crash course. The link will be on the description. So in order to use the library, we need to use the use form hook. So get started, and we're going to use JS. We need to use this use form, so I'm going to copy this. And this use form hook returns us a lot of stuff inside this object, and we need this register function. This register function will be used to register an input for the form. To learn more about this register function, go to this API, then use form, and here you will see everything that is returned from the use form function or the hook. And click on register, and here you will find everything that you can pass to this function and everything that is returned, also with bunch of examples. So we will go over them. So let's call the use form hook. Let's get the register function. We need to call this register function to the input elements. So register, and we need to pass the name, which is the input name. So name. And it will return you an object, and we have to spread that out. And this register function returns you this stuff, the onChange function, onBlur function, the name, and also the ref. So I'm going to call this register function to all of this input behind the scene. Okay, so I've added the register function to all the components. Now we need to add the onSubmit function. Let's destructure handle submit. And we already have our onSubmit function commented out. And I will still comment this line. We will use it in a minute. So this data will be an object containing all the input values, and we just want to display it as an alert. So let's add the onSubmit. We need to first call this handleSubmit function, return from the use form, and we need to pass the onSubmit as callback. So let's test it out. So I'm going to add my name, gender, email, password, and let's submit. And you see the data inside this alert. But how can you submit the form asynchronously? Because you might need to send the data to an API. We can mimic that very easily. So I'm going to uncomment this sleep function call and also the sleep function. This sleep function will stop running the code for a few moments, and we want to do it for 2 seconds in this case. And we can also get the submitting state in order to show the loader. So you need to use the form state, and we need to get is submitting, this one. So and let's get to the bottom and go to this button component, and let's add is loading, and we're going to pass is submitting. So now we can add the data again. So let's submit. We don't see the loading state. This looks good. Oh, sorry, this should be inside form state. Now it should work. So let's submit. And you can see the loading state and the data as an alert. Now you can also set default values. So inside this use form, you can pass default values. So name. Actually, I'm just gonna copy this object. And here, if I just refresh, now we have the default values. You can also do it asynchronously. For example, you have some data coming from an API, and then you want to pre-fill the form with those data. So you can also pass a function. So get async values. Actually, we don't need to call it. So we have this function, which will wait for 2 seconds, and after that it will return you this object. So now if I refresh, the form is empty and the input is now filled. You can also listen for changes by passing an onChange function to the register function. So this input element, I can pass options. So onChange, and we just want to console log the value, and it should be camel case. So if I modify it, you see the value printed out. But the way you want to get the values is using the watch function or the get values function. So watch function works in a subscription way, like I've shown you in the landing page. So it works similar to a control input. So here's what I mean. So I can just delete this from here. I don't need it. So I can get the watch function, and I can do a console log. And I want to listen for the changes in the name. So I will move this to the bottom. If I modify it, you can see the component gets re-rendered, and we see the value in the console. If you don't pass anything, it will return you an object with all the values. So if I change here, change the password, it always gets re-rendered. And you can do it another way, which is the get values function. And let's add that to a new button. So I'm gonna copy this. We don't need submit. It's loading. Get values on click, and we want to display the data as an alert. And if I click on get values, you see that data, but the component doesn't get re-rendered. I can prove that by adding a console log here. I ran. So I will click on get values. You see the data, but not the console log, which means the component didn't get re-rendered. So let's see some of the more properties and functions from the use form. So this is everything that is returned here. So this register function, we have seen it, and the opposite is unregister. This watch function, header submit function. We will also see the reset function, then set error, clear errors, set values, triggering, control, and so on. You can also get an individual field state. So let's talk about the form state, which is very important. It gives you a lot of properties. So you get is dirty, touched fields, dirty fields, is submitted, is submit successful. And then this is loading. You might get confused with is submitting. So is loading is for when the default values is loading. The submit count, how many times the form is submitted. If the form is valid, is validating. The errors object we will also see during the validation step. We can destructure more stuff. So is dirty, then dirty fields, touched fields, and let's change the form. You can see the form is now dirty. The dirty fields are name and gender. So now let's see how we can reset the form. So go to this reset, and reset gives you a lot of options to pass, like keep errors, keep dirty values, and so on. We're not interested in them. We just want to reset the values in the form. So you can call this reset function with a button. We can also do a reset after form submission, and they recommend to use effect like this. So we can just copy it and paste it here. And let's destructure the is submit successful. I'm gonna pass nothing to this reset function for now. Oh, sorry, the is submit successful is not coming from the use form. It is actually coming from the form state. So now if I change and submit, okay, and now the forms get reset with the default values. But if you want to make all the inputs totally empty, you need to pass the object. So I can just copy everything from here and pass it to this reset function. And let's make everything empty. And that should do the work. So now click on submit. And now the entire form is empty. Okay, so now it's a good time to talk about validation. So React Hook Form comes with default validation. However, you can integrate with third-party libraries like Yup, Zod, and so on. So I'm going to stick to the default validation. I think they are pretty good. So you need to go to this register function. So as options, you can pass these properties like required, max length, min length, max min, pattern, then validate function, value as number, value as state, on change, on blur, so many stuff. So let's add some validation rules. So we need to add that inside these options. So I want the name to be required, so the value can be false or a string, and the string has to be the name. Then the min length, we want 10, and the message should be minimum length should be 10. And let's get the errors object. And let's remove this one. And again, I have made a mistake. The errors object is actually coming from the state. So let's test. I'm gonna try to submit. It says minimum length should be 10. If I remove it, the field is required. So I'm gonna put validations to all of these inputs behind the scenes. Alright, so I have added all the validations. You can check on the source code. So now let's unselect the gender. Let's add an invalid email. Let's submit. You see all these errors. You can pass more options to the use form hook related to validations. So go to this use form hook, and here is the options. Like this one is for validation strategy before submitting, revalidate after submitting. Then you can also use the native validations. So the mode is can be on change, on blur, on submit, untouched, or all. The default value is on submit, but we can change it to, for example, on change. Mode is going to be on change. So if I now remove this sign, add sign, and now it shows the invalid email format. But if I edit, now the error disappears. So you can always learn more about this stuff from the documentation. You can also pass resolver, which is for integrating third-party libraries. We also have an example of this. So you can use the hook form resolvers, but you can also use other libraries like Yapzod. So here are the examples of them. But I'm not gonna go over them. You can learn from the doc. Now it's a good time to talk about form context. So this is actually the React context API for hook form. So with context API, you can create global state. So this form context, you can create a global state for your forms. A practical example can be a multi-step form where you have different forms, but you want to use a single state. So let's see how we can use it. It's pretty simple if you have already used React Context API. So I have also created another file, this my form with context, which just have one single input, this company field. So in the app.js file, I'm going to create the context. So let's again call the use form, and let's add the new form with context component wrapped by this form provider, and make sure you have destructured the return object from use form inside this form provider. And now let's go to the my form with context, and let's use the use form hook. Sorry, not the use form hook. We are going to use the use form with context hook. And let's delete these errors. And let's uncomment this on submit function. Add it to the form. On submit. Handle submit. And now we need to call the register function. And the value will be company name. And now you can see the default value is Google. I can also submit it. This is the value from the my form with context component. Now to prove that the state is actually inside this app component, not inside this my form with context, I can run the watch function, watch my form.watch, And as I will type, the value should be printed on the console. You can see the value is printed on the console. So that's how this my form with context work. I know it was a dummy example, but I hope you have got the point and now you know how to use it. Now let's see how we can use the depth tool. So go to this tools, then depth tools. So you get this kind of depth tool, which can be handy for checking the form state. Like if the value is dirty, so it's touched, what is the value of it, what's the name of it, and so on. In order to use it, you need to install this package, and then you have to import it and add it to your app. So I'm gonna copy this, and we need to get the control, which will be form methods dot control, and let's import the depth tool, and that should be it. And now you can see the depth tool. You can see all the states. You can collapse it, refresh it, and so on. So that's all there is that I wanted to show you about this library. It is pretty good in my opinion. It gives you a lot of features. It makes your app very performant. So if you have learned something new from this video, consider like and subscribe to my channel. Press the bell icon so that you don't miss an update. And also, if you have any question or if you want to give me any feedback, just let me know in the comments section. Alright, so see you in the next video. Goodbye.